Hello. As we know, we have two types of reproduction in plant: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. And the asexual reproduction is called vegetative, comes from the vegetables. Today we are going to talk about plant sexual reproduction. Let's revise parts of a flower. The typical flower consists of 4 roles. The first one is called calyx, and one of them is called sepal. The second role is called corolla, and one of them is called petal. The next role we are going to talk about androsium, which is the male reproductive organ. One of them is called stamen, and the stamen consists of anther and filament. The next role is called gynosium. The gynosium consists of carpels, and one carpel consists of stigma, style, ovary. Some flowers contain both male and female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called bisexual flower. So the bisexual flower contains both stamen and the carpels. And other flowers possess either the male or the female reproductive parts. Such a flower are called unisexual flower. The unisexual, like corn and the cucumber. We have the corn has male flower and the female flower, and also cucumber has male flower and the female flower. While in the bisexual, such as tulip, the flower of tulip contains both male and the female reproductive organ. And now let's talk about the reproduction in flower. The reproduction in flower happen on 2 steps. The first step is called pollination, and the second step is called fertilization. Now we are going to talk about the first step, which is called pollination, and what is the meaning of pollination. So we have 2 types of pollination. The first type is called self-pollination, when the pollen grain transfer from the stamen of the flower to the stigma of the same flower. And the second type is called the cross-pollination. And the cross-pollination happen when the pollen grains transfer from a stamen of a flower to a stigma of another flower of the same kind. Of course, it must be of the same kind. So as we said, types of pollination: self-pollination and the cross-pollination, and how this pollination takes place. Now we are going to know. The pollination takes place by the help of the wind or insects or even water. But in our syllabus, we are not going to say water. We are going to say artificial pollination made by man. Let's talk now about the wind. How the pollen grains transfer by the wind from the anther to the stigma of another flower. In that case, the pollen grains must be very light because it will be carried by the wind. The second condition, the anther must be hanged because after the anther become mature, so it will be ruptured by the wind. So what will happen if it hang it? It will be easily ruptured, and the pollen grains carried by the wind from the anther to the stigma of another flower. Also, the number of pollen grains must be a huge number because some of them will be lost by the wind. It will be lost on floor or any other flower, not the flower we wanna to pollinate it. So the number of pollen grains must be a huge number because there is a huge also number will be lost by the wind. The second type or the second way of the transfer of pollination by the insects. In that case, we have colorful flower, and also scented. Why? Because the insects will be attracted to it. How the insects will be attracted to it? The insects attracted to the scented and colorful flower. Then the pollen grains carried in the legs of the insects from the anther of the male to the stigma of the female, and the pollination takes place. And now, if we are going to talk about the third way, is the artificial pollination. This artificial pollination takes place by the help of the man. Like in the case of the palm tree, the pollen grains is very heavy, so it will not be carried either by the insects or by the wind. So the man go to the male palm tree and take the pollen grains, and then go to the female and pollinate it by the man. So this is called artificial pollination made by man. Now let's talk about the second step, which is called fertilization. What is the fertilization? Fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gametes to give rise to an embryo, or what we called zygote. Now, to understand the fertilization, we must know the new words we have: fusion, gametes, and embryo. So what are the gametes? Gametes are specialized cells which serve in the function of reproduction, and we have two types of gametes. The first one is called the male gamete, and the second one is called female gamete. The male gamete and the female gamete form the zygote. The zygote, which is the cell of the embryo. Now, what is the zygote? The zygote is a single cell structure formed from the fusion of male and female gametes. And also zygote develops into the embryo. Then the embryo develops into the organism or the plant. Now let us summarize it. Male plus female gametes will fuse together and give zygote. The zygote develops into embryo, and the embryo develops into organism. And now, in sexual reproduction, there are 3 steps. The first one, male and female gamete, which are called sex cell, they are fused together, and then the fusion of the gametes will form the zygote. And then the zygote develops into embryo, and the embryo develops into what? Into organism or the plant. Now you understand the definition of fertilization, which is the process of fusion of male and the female gametes to give rise to an embryo. That's enough for today. Next time we are going to complete our lesson. Thank you and goodbye.